The storage room doors slammed shut, with a metallic clang that echoed through Lincoln High's empty gymnasium at 7:15 p.m., trapping 26-year-old Emma Parker in complete darkness with three teenage predators who thought their varsity jackets made them untouchable. As Jake Morrison's 6'2" frame blocked the only exit, while his accomplices Tyler Brooks and Marcus Davis flanked her on both sides. Emma's trembling fingers secretly activated the emergency SOS feature on her smartwatch, a decision that would expose the most twisted bullying ring in the school's history and bring down an entire corrupt administration. What happened next would make national headlines. But first, Emma had to survive the next 7 minutes alone with boys who had already hospitalized 2 students this semester. Before we dive into Emma's incredible story of courage, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for being here. Your support means everything. If this story touches your heart or reminds you of someone who stood up when it mattered most, please consider hitting the like button and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and often find inspiration for future stories in your experiences. And if you'd like to help these stories reach more people who need to hear them, maybe a teacher facing impossible odds, a student finding their voice, or a parent fighting for their child, there's a small thanks button beneath this video. Your contributions, no matter how modest, help me dedicate more time to uncovering and sharing these powerful true stories that remind us all that one person really can make a difference. Now, let's return to that fateful Monday morning when Emma Parker first walked through Lincoln High's doors. Not knowing she was about to change everything, Emma Parker's first day at Lincoln High School started with promise at 7:30 a.m. when she walked through the main entrance, her blonde ponytail swaying as she carried a box of brand-new gym equipment she'd purchased with her own money, nearly $800 worth of supplies for students who deserved better than deflated basketballs and torn volleyball nets. The hallways buzzed with typical Monday morning energy as students rushed to their lockers. But Emma noticed something off about the atmosphere, the way certain kids pressed themselves against walls when 3 particular Letterman jackets appeared, how conversations died mid-sentence. And most disturbing of all, the fresh bruises poorly concealed under makeup on several students' faces. Welcome to Lincoln High, where excellence meets tradition, Principal Robert Thompson had said during her interview 3 weeks ago, his practiced smile never quite reaching his eyes as he'd shown her around the pristine administrative offices that seemed worlds away from the peeling paint and broken tiles in the student areas. Emma had left her position at a well-funded private school in Seattle, specifically to work with underprivileged youth, driven by memories of her own struggles as a scholarship kid surrounded by wealthy bullies who'd made her life hell until one brave teacher had stood up for her. The first incident happened at 8:45 a.m., when Emma heard muffled crying from the girls' bathroom next to the gymnasium. She pushed open the door to find Lily Anderson, a petite, 16-year-old sophomore with dark hair and thick glasses, cornered by 3 senior girls who were dumping the contents of her backpack into a toilet while recording on their phones. "Delete that video and get to class now," Emma commanded, her teacher voice cutting through their laughter like a blade. The girls exchanged smirks before sauntering out, but not before the tallest one wearing expensive designer jeans that probably cost more than some family's monthly grocery bills, muttered just loud enough for Emma to hear, "Jake's not gonna like this." Emma spent her planning period at 10 a.m., helping Lily salvage what she could from her soaked textbooks. Learning that this was the 4th time this month she'd been targeted, "It's because I refused to do Jake Morrison's homework," Lily explained, her voice barely above a whisper, as she carefully dried pages of her calculus notebook. "He said if I didn't help him cheat, he'd make sure I never felt safe at school again. The teachers, they don't do anything. His dad basically owns half the town, and his mom's on the school board." The name Jake Morrison kept surfacing throughout Emma's first week, like a disease spreading through the student body. Captain of the football team, son of Morrison Construction's CEO, driving a $70,000 BMW to school, while his victims took the bus with black eyes and split lips. Emma started documenting everything in a private journal, timestamps, witness names, injury descriptions, building a case that even the most negligent administration couldn't ignore. What she didn't know was that Jake had his own intelligence network, fed by fear and intimidation, and her every move was being reported back to him. Thursday's incident at 12:30 p.m. changed everything. Emma was monitoring lunch when she heard a commotion near the cafeteria's back corner, the spot everyone called no man's land, because teachers rarely ventured there. She found Jake Morrison and his two constant shadows, Tyler Brooks and Marcus Davis, surrounding a freshman named David Kim, who was on his knees picking up scattered homework papers while the trio kicked his belongings across the floor. "Problem here, gentlemen?" Emma asked, stepping between them and David. Jake's ice-blue eyes fixed on her with predatory calculation as his lips curved into a smile that belonged on a shark. "No problem at all, Miss Parker," Jake replied, his voice dripping with false politeness that made Emma's skin crawl. "David here just dropped his stuff. We were helping him pick it up, weren't we?" "Boys?" Tyler snickered while Marcus remained silent, though Emma noticed something flicker across his face. Doubt, maybe, or the faintest hint of shame. She helped David gather his papers, noting the tremor in his hands and the way he flinched when Tyler moved too suddenly. After the boys left, David whispered a rushed "thank you" before practically running away. But not before Emma saw the old bruises on his arms, the kind that came from being repeatedly grabbed and shoved. Emma's report to Principal Thompson that afternoon at 2 p.m. went exactly as she'd feared. He sat behind his mahogany desk easily worth $5,000 in a school where students shared outdated textbooks and listened with practiced concern before launching into a well-rehearsed speech about boys being boys and the importance of not jumping to conclusions about our star athletes. When Emma showed him photos she'd taken of students' injuries, he barely glanced at them before suggesting she focus on building positive relationships rather than looking for problems that aren't there. "These kids are terrorizing other students," Emma insisted, her voice rising with frustration. "David Kim has bruises consistent with physical assault. Lily Anderson is afraid to come to school. How many more have to suffer before?" "Miss Parker," Thompson interrupted, his friendly facade cracking to reveal something harder underneath. "You've been here less than a week. Jake Morrison's family has contributed over $200,000 to this school's athletic program. His father employs half this town. Are you really suggesting we ruin a young man's future over some roughhousing?" The threat in his words was clear. "Rock the boat, and you'll be the one who drowns." Friday brought escalation. Emma found a note in her faculty mailbox at 7 a.m. "Mind your own business, or you'll regret it." The handwriting was deliberately crude, but she recognized the expensive paper, the same brand she'd seen Jake using in the hallway. During her second-period gym class, someone had slashed all 4 tires on her Honda Civic in the faculty parking lot, a repair that would cost her nearly $600 she couldn't afford on a teacher's salary. Security cameras conveniently malfunctioned during that time period. According to the resource officer, who seemed more interested in scrolling through his phone than investigating, the weekend offered no respite. Emma woke Saturday at 3 a.m. to the sound of breaking glass. Someone had thrown a brick through her apartment window with another note attached. "Last warning?" She filed a police report, but the officer who responded seemed skeptical when she mentioned Jake Morrison's name, muttering something about kids from good families not doing things like this. Emma spent Sunday installing a security system she couldn't afford, the $800 expense destroying her budget for the next 2 months, and trying to convince herself she wasn't in over her head. Monday's faculty meeting at 3:30 p.m. revealed the depth of the problem. When Emma tried to bring up the bullying issue during open discussion, several veteran teachers exchanged knowing looks before suddenly becoming fascinated with their phones or paperwork. Mrs. Henderson, who'd taught English at Lincoln for 20 years, caught Emma in the parking lot afterward. "You seem like a nice girl," she said quietly, glancing around nervously. "But you need to understand how things work here. The Morrison family, the Brooks family, the Davis family, they run this town. Cross them, and you won't just lose your job, you'll never work in this state again." Emma's breaking point came Wednesday, when she found Lily Anderson locked in a supply closet at lunch. hyperventilating and covered in what looked like chocolate milk, but smelled like something worse. They said next time it would be acid. Lily sobbed, her whole body shaking. They said if I talked to you again, they'd make sure I never graduated, that they'd ruin my college applications, that my dad would lose his job at Morrison Construction. Emma held the terrified girl, her own anger crystallizing into cold determination. The system had failed these kids, but she wouldn't. She started her counteroffensive quietly. Using skills learned from her investigative journalist mother before cancer had claimed her 5 years ago. Emma created encrypted files documenting every incident, uploaded evidence to multiple cloud servers, and began reaching out to former Lincoln High students through social media. The stories that came back painted a picture of systematic abuse spanning years, hospitalizations covered up, sexual assaults brushed under the rug, families paid off or threatened into silence. Jake Morrison wasn't just a bully, he was a predator protected by a corrupt system. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Marcus Davis approached Emma after school on Thursday, checking over his shoulder repeatedly before speaking. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice cracking. "What we're doing, it's wrong. Jake's planning something for you. Something big. He's obsessed with putting you in your place." Marcus explained how Jake kept a trophy book in his gym locker, photos and videos of their victims, detailed records of every assault, every humiliation. "He thinks he's untouchable, and maybe he is, but I can't. I have a little sister. What if someone did this to her?" Emma knew she was walking into a trap when Jake approached her Friday after school at 6:30 p.m. All false charm and fake concern. "Miss Parker, could you help me with something in the equipment room? I'm trying to organize a charity basketball game, and I need advice on gear." His smile was perfect, practiced, the kind that had probably fooled dozens of adults who wanted to believe the best about a good kid from a good family. Emma agreed, but not before activating the voice recording app on her phone and setting her smartwatch to emergency mode feature she'd researched extensively. After the break-in, the gymnasium was eerily quiet as Jake led her toward the storage area, their footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Emma noticed Tyler Brooks lounging near the exit, scrolling through his phone with studied casualness, while Marcus Davis stood by the water fountain, his face a mask of reluctance. "Funny how your friends happen to be here for a charity planning session," Emma observed, keeping her voice light, even as her heart rate spiked. Jake's laugh was cold, devoid of any pretense now that they were away from potential witnesses. "You know, Miss Parker," Jake said as he opened the storage room door, gesturing for her to enter first with mock politeness. "My dad taught me that there are two kinds of people in this world, those who know their place, and those who need to be taught. Guess which one you are?" The storage room was larger than she'd expected, filled with racks of equipment and stacks of wrestling mats that blocked any view from the small window. As she stepped inside, she heard Tyler moving behind her, cutting off her escape route. "I know exactly where my place is," Emma replied, standing her ground as the three boys entered the room, spreading out to surround her. "It's protecting students from predators like you." Her finger found the emergency button on her smartwatch. Pressing it 3 times in rapid succession, the signal that would send her GPS location and an automated distress call to 911. The watch vibrated once in confirmation, a sensation she hoped the boys didn't notice in the dim light. Jake's facade finally cracked completely, revealing the monster underneath the all-American exterior. "You think you're some kind of hero? You're just another uptight bitch who needs to learn respect." He moved closer, using his size to intimidate, a tactic that had probably worked on countless victims before. "Do you have any idea what my family can do to you? One phone call from my dad, and you'll be blacklisted from every school in a 3-state radius. But first, we're going to teach you a lesson about interfering in things that don't concern you." Emma backed against a rack of football helmets, her hands subtly adjusting her watch to ensure the microphone was unobstructed. "Is that a threat? Jake, are you saying you'll use your family's influence to destroy my career because I reported your bullying?" She kept her voice steady, clear, making sure every word would be captured by the recording. "Tell me about Lily Anderson. Tell me about David Kim. Tell me about all the students you've hurt." Tyler laughed. A harsh sound that echoed off the concrete walls. "She's recording us. Jake, check out the smartwatch." But Jake was too deep in his power trip to care. Too confident in his immunity. "Let her record. My mom's on the school board. Remember? My dad owns half the cops in this town. You think anyone's going to believe some nobody teacher over me?" "I believe them," Marcus said suddenly, his voice cutting through the tension. "I've been part of this for too long. And I'm done. Emma's right, we're monsters." The shock on Jake's face quickly morphed into rage as he rounded on his supposed friend. "You're making a big mistake. Marcus, you know what happens to traitors?" The threat hung in the air like a physical presence, heavy with the promise of violence. Emma used the distraction to press her watch again, activating the direct audio stream to emergency services. "So you admit to hurting students? To using your family's power to cover up assaults?" She needed confessions. He needed them to damn themselves with their own words. "How many kids have you hospitalized, Jake? How many have you threatened into silence?" "Dozens," Jake boasted, his ego overriding any remaining caution. You should see the look in their eyes when they realize no one's coming to save them. When they understand that in this town, I am the law. That fat kid last year who thought he could report me? He spent a week in the ICU, and the official report said he fell down the stairs. The girl who refused to send me pictures? Her dad's construction business mysteriously lost all its contracts. Power isn't about money. Miss Parker, it's about fear. The door suddenly rattled. Locked from the outside, Tyler's doing. Emma realized. Her heart pounded as Jake advanced, his intentions clear in his predatory gaze. "You know what your problem is? You think the system works? You think if you document enough, report enough, eventually someone will care. But the system is mine. The principal, the school board, the police. They all answer to families like mine. And after tonight, you'll answer to me too." Emma's watch buzzed repeatedly. Emergency services had received her location and were responding. She just had to survive until they arrived. "You're right about one thing, Jake. The system is broken. But you forgot about technology? This watch has been streaming everything to the police since I pressed the SOS button. They have your confession, your threats, everything." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Jake's face. "You're bluffing. No watch can." His words were cut off by the distant wail of sirens, growing louder by the second. Chuler panicked, fumbling with the door lock, while Marcus stepped away from the group, his hands raised. "I'm done. Jake, I'll testify. I'll tell them everything." "You traitor!" Jake lunged at Marcus, his fist connecting with the smaller boy's jaw with a sickening crack. Emma moved instinctively, grabbing a baseball bat from the equipment rack. "Back off. Jake, it's over. The police are here." But Jake was beyond reason, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. He turned on Emma. Rage replacing calculation. "You destroyed everything. My future. My family's reputation." The storage room door burst open as Officer Sarah Williams and her partner rushed in, weapons drawn. Everyone on the ground. "No!" The next few minutes were a blur of shouted commands, handcuffs clicking, and rights being read. As Jake was led away, he turned to Emma with pure hatred in his eyes. "This isn't over. My family will destroy you. Your family is about to have bigger problems," Officer Williams said, holding up her phone, showing a live stream notification. Seems someone was recording from outside the window. "The whole thing's already gone viral, 50,000 views and climbing. Your confession to hospitalizing students, threatening families, corrupting officials. It's all there in HD quality." As the chaos settled and statements were being taken, Emma noticed Lily Anderson standing near the gymnasium entrance, her phone still in hand. The quiet girl who'd been too terrified to speak up had found her own way to fight back, documenting the evidence that would ensure Jake Morrison could never hurt anyone again. Their eyes met across the gym, and Lily smiled, the first genuine smile Emma had seen from her. Principal Thompson arrived at 8 p.m., his face ashen as he surveyed the scene. "Miss Parker, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding." "Save it," Officer Williams interrupted. "We've got enough evidence to launch a full investigation into this school's handling of assault reports. You might want to call your lawyer As Emma walked out of Lincoln High that night, her phone buzzed with messages from students, parents, and teachers, some thanking her, others sharing their own stories. The smartwatch on her wrist, now evidence in what would become a landmark case, had done more than save her life. It had given voice to years of silenced victims and exposed a culture of corruption that had festered in the shadows of tradition and excellence. But Emma knew this was just the beginning. Jake Morrison might be in custody, but the system that created and protected him was still in place. As she drove home through the quiet streets, passing the Morrison construction signs that seemed to mock her from every corner, she thought about all the Lily Andersons still hiding in supply closets, all the David Kims still picking up scattered homework while fighting back tears. Her phone rang an unknown number with a California area code. "Miss Parker? This is Janet Walsh from the National Center for School Safety. We've been following your situation. How would you feel about helping us develop a nationwide program to combat institutional bullying? We need someone with your courage and first-hand experience." Emma pulled over, her hands shaking not from fear but from possibility. "Tell me more," she said, watching as 3 more police cars headed toward Lincoln High, their lights painting the night in shades of justice. Finally served. The war against bullying at Lincoln High was far from over, but for the first time in years, the victims had won a battle, and Emma Parker, the fresh teacher who'd refused to know her place, had just become their greatest weapon in the fight ahead. The viral video had reached 2.3 million views by Saturday morning, but Emma Parker discovered that justice in a small town moved slower than internet fame when Jake Morrison walked out of the county jail at 9 a.m., his parents flanking him as their family lawyer spoke to assembled reporters about false allegations and edited footage. Emma watched from her apartment window as protesters gathered outside Lincoln High, divided between supporters holding "Justice for Jake" signs, mostly wealthy parents whose kids played on the football team, and survivors carrying "Believe Victims" banners, their faces marked with determination born from years of silence. The first retaliation came at 4:30 a.m. Sunday, when Emma's car exploded in the parking lot. The blast, shattering windows 3 buildings away and triggering car alarms throughout the complex. The fire department found remnants of a sophisticated incendiary device, not some amateur Molotov cocktail, but professional-grade arson that spoke to resources and connections. "This wasn't meant to kill you," Fire Chief Martinez explained as Emma stared at the charred skeleton of her Honda. "This was meant to send a message. Whoever did this wanted you to know they could reach you anytime, anywhere." Officer Sarah Williams arrived with a grim expression and worse news. Jake made bail Friday night, $500,000 posted in cash by his father. The judge, Harold Morrison, happens to be Jake's uncle. "We're fighting to get the case moved to another jurisdiction, but the Morrison family lawyers are fighting it hard." She handed Emma a thick folder. "These are copies of threats made against you on social media. We've identified over 300 credible ones, mostly from burner accounts, linked to IP addresses in this county." Monday morning brought a new kind of warfare when Emma arrived at school to find her classroom destroyed, computers smashed, personal belongings soaked in what forensic analysis would later identify as industrial-grade acid, and a message spray-painted across the whiteboard, "Leave or burn." Principal Thompson stood in the doorway, his practiced concern now replaced with naked fear. "Perhaps it would be best if you took some time off, Miss Parker, for your safety and the safety of our students." "That's exactly what they want," Emma replied, photographing everything for evidence. "If I run, every bully in this school learns that violence works. Every victim learns that speaking up gets you punished." She spent the morning teaching in the destroyed classroom, making each act of vandalism a lesson about standing up to intimidation. Students trickled in slowly at first, then in groups, many bringing cleaning supplies from home. By noon, over 100 kids were helping restore the room, a small revolution disguised as a cleanup crew. Lily Anderson had transformed from victim to warrior, organizing what she called the Evidence Brigade students, who documented every instance of bullying, every threat, every act of retaliation. "They think we're weak because we're scared," she told the group gathered in the library after school. "But we're not weak. We're survivors. And we have something they don't teach other, and the truth. Her presentation included spreadsheets tracking patterns of abuse, video testimonies from dozens of victims, and a timeline showing how the Morrison, Brooks, and Davis families had corrupted every level of local authority. The breakthrough came from Marcus Davis, who arrived at the police station Tuesday evening with a duffel bag containing Jake's trophy collection, 3 leather-bound journals filled with photos, videos, and detailed accounts of assaults dating back 5 years. Page 47, Marcus said quietly, his face still bearing bruises from Jake's attack. That's where he describes putting Michael Chen in the hospital last year. Michael's family was paid $100,000 to leave town and stay quiet. The journals contained enough evidence to charge Jake with 43 separate felonies, including aggravated assault, extortion, and conspiracy. Wednesday's school board meeting erupted into chaos when Emma presented her evidence to a packed auditorium. Board President Margaret Morrison, Jake's mother, tried to shut down the presentation, but parents who'd remained silent for years finally found their voices. My son attempted suicide after Jake's gang tormented him, one father said, his voice breaking. We were told if we pursued charges, my construction business would lose every contract in town. I chose my son's life over justice, and I've regretted it every day since. The Morrison family's response was swift and vicious. Thursday morning, Emma received an envelope containing photos of her at various locations grocery shopping, jogging, visiting her mother's grave, each image marked with crosshairs. The accompanying note, written on Morrison construction letterhead, read, "Accidents happen, car accidents, house fires, random violence. Lincoln County is a dangerous place for troublemakers." But Emma had learned from her enemy's playbook. She'd installed hidden cameras that captured the Morrison family's private investigator delivering the threat. Principal Thompson's resignation came Friday afternoon, preceded by FBI agents escorting him from the building in handcuffs. The federal investigation, triggered by evidence of interstate conspiracy and civil rights violations, had uncovered a web of corruption spanning the entire county. Thompson took over $300,000 in bribes over 8 years. Special Agent Jennifer Rodriguez explained at a press conference. He systematically covered up assaults, destroyed evidence, and threatened witnesses. This wasn't negligence, it was criminal conspiracy. The war intensified when Tyler Brooks was arrested attempting to plant drugs in Emma's new rental car, his plan foiled by the security system she'd installed after the fire. His confession, motivated by a plea deal, revealed the true scope of Jake's operation. We had kids on payroll as informants, Tyler admitted, his bravado crumbling in the interrogation room. Teachers too, janitors who'd unlock doors, security guards who'd delete footage. Jake called it the network, and it reached everywhere: the hospital where injuries got misdiagnosed, the police station where reports disappeared, even the local newspaper where stories got buried. Saturday's rally drew over 3,000 people to Lincoln High's football field. Victims, families, supporters from neighboring counties, and media from across the nation. Emma stood before the crowd, wearing a bulletproof vest under her jacket after credible death threats. "They want us to be afraid," she said, her voice carrying across the field where Jake Morrison had once reigned supreme. "They want us to accept that money equals immunity, that power means permission to terrorize, but we are not afraid anymore. We are not silent anymore, and we will not stop until every victim has justice." The Morrison empire began crumbling Monday when federal investigators froze assets worth over $40 million, citing evidence of money laundering through construction contracts used to pay off victims and officials. Morrison Construction lost its largest government contract after whistleblowers revealed safety violations covered up through bribes. But the real victory came when Judge Harold Morrison was arrested for obstruction of justice, his removal allowing the case to be transferred to a federal court where Jake's family name carried no weight. Emma's testimony before the grand jury lasted 6 hours, every word recorded, as she detailed not just the storage room assault, but the systematic terrorism that had plagued Lincoln High for years. She presented the journals, the recordings, the financial records showing payoffs, and most powerfully, The testimony of 47 victims who'd found courage in her example. Jake Morrison didn't just hurt bodies, she concluded. He poisoned an entire community with fear. He made children afraid to learn, teachers afraid to teach, and parents afraid to protect their kids. That ends now. The trial's first day brought a shock when Margaret Morrison took the stand, not for the defense, but for the prosecution, facing 20 years for conspiracy charges. She'd made a deal. "My son is a monster," she said, tears streaming down her face. "My husband and I created him, enabled him, protected him from consequences until he believed he was untouchable. I've seen the videos, read the journals. God forgive me. I knew what he was, and I chose family loyalty over those children's lives." Jake's conviction on all charges came with a 40-year sentence, the judge noting the exceptional cruelty and systematic nature of his crimes. Tyler Brooks received 15 years, his cooperation earning some leniency. Marcus Davis, who testified for the prosecution, received probation and mandatory counseling, the court recognizing his eventual rejection of the criminal conspiracy. But the verdicts were just the beginning of Lincoln County's reckoning with its culture of complicity. The new principal, Dr. Maria Santos, arrived with a mandate to transform Lincoln High. A former FBI agent turned education reformer, she implemented sweeping changes, mandatory reporting training for all staff, anonymous tip systems monitored by external agencies, and a zero-tolerance policy backed by real consequences. "Culture change doesn't happen overnight," she told Emma during their first meeting, "but it starts with people like you who refuse to accept the unacceptable." Emma's work with the National Center for School Safety began while she continued teaching at Lincoln High, developing programs that would be implemented in schools nationwide. The Parker Protocol, as it became known, combined technology, documentation, and community involvement to break the silence that allowed bullying to flourish. Her smartwatch, now in evidence storage, had become a symbol proof that one person with courage and the right tools could stand against an entire system. The one-year anniversary of the storage room incident brought unexpected visitors. Lily Anderson, now student body president, presented Emma with a plaque signed by hundreds of students. "To the teacher who taught us courage is contagious," David Kim, no longer the terrified freshman, spoke at the ceremony. "Miss Parker didn't just save us from bullies. She showed us we could save ourselves, that we deserved safety, that our voices mattered." Michael Chen's family returned to Lincoln County for the ceremony, their presence a powerful reminder of the price of silence. "We left because we thought there was no hope," Michael's mother said, embracing Emma. "You gave us justice we never thought possible. Jake Morrison took my son's childhood, but you gave him back his faith that good people can win against evil." Emma's phone rang constantly with offers, book deals, movie rights, speaking engagements at conferences nationwide. But she remained at Lincoln High, teaching gym by day and working with at-risk students after school. "This is where I'm needed," she explained to reporters who questioned why she'd stay in a town that had nearly destroyed her. Running away would tell every victim that the bullies ultimately win. Staying shows them that we can reclaim our spaces, rebuild our communities, and create the change we need. The Morrison family compound, once a symbol of untouchable power, was sold at federal auction. The proceeds distributed to victims through a court-managed fund. The building that had housed Morrison Construction became a community center offering free counseling, legal aid, and support services for bullying victims. Jake Morrison's former office, with its view of the entire town, was converted into a memorial room, displaying photos and stories of those who'd suffered in silence, a permanent reminder that power without conscience is just another form of weakness. Emma stood in her rebuilt classroom one evening, reviewing applications for the teaching positions opened by the investigation's Revelations 12 staff members had been terminated or arrested for their roles in the cover-up. Her smartwatch, a newer model with enhanced safety features, rested on her desk beside stacks of thank-you letters from students and parents across the country. The room that had once been destroyed in rage was now filled with hope, its walls covered with photos from the anti-bullying club's activities and newspaper clippings documenting Lincoln High's transformation. A knock interrupted her thoughts. A young woman entered hesitantly. Sarah Williams. Recently promoted to police chief after the previous chief's resignation. "I wanted to thank you," Williams said, "not just for exposing the corruption, but for showing us what real courage looks like. You could have backed down a dozen times. But you didn't. Because of you, my daughter and every other kid in this town can go to school without fear." The final school board meeting of the year brought a standing ovation when Dr. Santos announced that Lincoln High's bullying incidents had dropped by 97%, academic performance had improved across all demographics, and enrollment was increasing as families who'd fled the Morrison reign of terror returned. "This isn't just about statistics," Santos said. "It's about creating a culture where every student knows they matter, where every voice counts, and where courage is rewarded instead of punished." Emma's mother would have been proud, she thought, touching the small pendant containing her mother's photo, the investigative journalist who'd taught her that truth was worth fighting for. Even when the fight seemed impossible, the woman who'd said, "Evil flourishes when good people convince themselves they're powerless. Never let anyone make you believe you can't make a difference." The storage room, where Jake Morrison had thought he'd break her, had been transformed into a meditation space for students dealing with anxiety and trauma, place of healing. Where fear once lived, Emma often found students there. Some crying, some talking, all healing from wounds both visible and invisible. The emergency button that had saved her life inspired a school-wide app allowing any student to instantly alert authorities with GPS precision technology, serving justice instead of enabling oppression. As graduation day approached, Emma watched her seniors prepare for futures that had once seemed impossible under Jake Morrison's shadow. Lily Anderson, headed to Yale on a full scholarship to study law, specifically civil rights. David Kim, accepted to MIT for engineering, his confidence rebuilt through robotics club successes. Even Marcus Davis, working through his community service at the youth center, had enrolled in community college to become a counselor, determined to help kids avoid the path he'd taken. The national impact was undeniable. 43 states had implemented versions of the Parker Protocol, thousands of schools had upgraded their safety systems, and federal legislation, Emma's law-mandated external oversight of bullying complaints in schools receiving federal funding. The smartwatch industry reported a 300% increase in emergency feature activations, with dozens of documented cases where the technology had prevented assaults or saved lives. Emma's final reflection came as she packed up her classroom for summer break, preparing for a speaking tour that would take her story to schools nationwide. The room that had witnessed destruction and rebirth stood as testament to a simple truth. One person with courage could indeed change everything. The smartwatch on her wrist now, a symbol worn by teachers and students across America, reminded her that sometimes the smallest acts of preparation could have the largest consequences. A new message appeared on her phone from an unknown number. "Miss Parker, I'm a teacher in Detroit facing a similar situation. Your story gave me hope. Can you help?" Emma smiled, typing back quickly, "You're not alone. Let's talk about how to fight back safely and effectively. Remember, courage is contagious, and justice is possible." As she left Lincoln High that evening, Emma paused at the memorial garden planted where her car had burned, a space of beauty grown from ashes, featuring a bronze plaque with words that had become a rallying cry for anti-bullying movements nationwide. "In the face of evil, silence is complicity. In the presence of fear, courage is revolutionary. In the midst of darkness, one light can illuminate the path to justice." The girl who'd walked into Lincoln High, hoping to make a difference, had become a woman who'd changed the world, one act of courage at a time. And somewhere in juvenile detention, Jake Morrison was learning what his victims had always known, that actions have consequences, that power without empathy is meaningless, and that sometimes the smallest person with the smartest plan can bring down the mightiest tyrant. The storage room door that had once trapped her now stood open, transformed from a place of intended violence into a sanctuary of hope. And Emma Parker, The fresh teacher who'd refused to know her place had taught an entire nation that standing up to bullies wasn't just possible, it was necessary, powerful, and ultimately triumphant. The epilogue came 3 years later when Emma returned to Lincoln High for a special ceremony. The gymnasium where terror once reigned had been renamed Courage Hall, and the storage room that had nearly become her tomb now housed the National Anti-Bullying Archive, thousands of survivor stories, evidence files, and testimonials that prosecutors nationwide could access. Emma touched the smart glass door that replaced the old metal one, remembering how different everything had been that horrific night. "Miss Parker," a voice called out, and Emma turned to see David Kim, now a senior at MIT, holding hands with a confident young woman. "This is my girlfriend, May. I've told her everything about you, how you saved my life." David's transformation was remarkable. The terrified freshman who'd once picked up scattered papers while being kicked was now leading robotics teams and mentoring at risk youth. "I created an app based on your experience," he said proudly, showing her his phone. "It's like your smartwatch emergency feature, but includes real-time streaming to multiple platforms simultaneously. We've had 800,000 downloads." The ceremony drew national attention as Secretary of Education Patricia Hawkins announced Lincoln High as the flagship school for the Federal Safe Learning Initiative. "What happened here was a tragedy," Hawkins said, standing where Jake Morrison had once held court. "But what emerged from that, darkness fueled by Emma Parker's extraordinary courages, saved countless lives across America. Today, we announce that every public school in the nation will receive funding for advanced safety technology and mandatory trauma-informed training." Lily Anderson, now in her final year at Yale Law, delivered the keynote address. "3 years ago, I was locked in a supply closet, covered in what I won't describe, believing my life was over. Today, I'm clerking for the Supreme Court this summer, working specifically on cases involving institutional violence and cover-ups." She paused, finding Emma in the crowd. "Miss Parker taught us that documentation beats intimidation, that truth beats power, and that courage is the most contagious force in the universe." The surprise announcement came from Marcus Davis, who'd completed his counseling degree and returned to Lincoln County. "I'm opening the Marcus Davis Center for Restorative Justice," he said, his voice steady, despite visible emotion. "It's funded by my family's settlement from the federal lawsuit. Money that once protected criminals will now help heal their victims. I was part of the problem, complicit in terrorizing innocent kids. I can't undo that, but I can spend my life making amends." Principal Santos presented statistics that seemed impossible 3 years ago. 0 reported bullying incidents in 6 months. College acceptance rates up 400%. And teacher applications exceeding positions by 50-to-1 ratios. Lincoln High went from being synonymous with terror to becoming America's safest school. We have students transferring in from private academies because parents know their children are protected here not by silence or complicity, but by vigilance and justice. The Morrison family's complete downfall had been spectacular. Jake Morrison, whose 40-year sentence had been upheld on appeal, had become a cautionary tale studied in criminology courses. His father died of a heart attack while under federal investigation, and Morrison Construction's assets were liquidated to pay over $50 million in civil settlements. Margaret Morrison, serving her own sentence, had become an advocate for prison reform and regularly wrote to Emma, each letter an apology for the monster she'd helped create. Emma's presentation featured the evolution of school safety technology inspired by that night. "My smartwatch saved my life, but it also exposed a critical gap in how we protect vulnerable populations. Today's systems include ambient listening devices that detect distress keywords, panic buttons in every room, and AI-powered threat assessment that can identify patterns of escalating behavior." She demonstrated the new teacher protection protocols, including biometric stress monitors that automatically alert security when educators show signs of extreme duress. The memorial wall in Courage Hall displayed photos of 47 known victims from Jake's reign of terror, but also celebrated their achievements since finding justice A young woman who'd attempted suicide after Jake's assault was now a pediatric nurse. A boy who dropped out from fear had earned his GED and opened a successful auto shop. Each story represented resilience, triumphing over trauma, hope defeating despair. The Parker Protocol has prevented over 3,000 documented assaults nationwide. Dr. Santos announced, but more importantly, it's created cultures where bullying is stopped before it escalates to violence. We've shifted from reactive punishment to proactive prevention, from protecting perpetrators to empowering victims. As the ceremony concluded, Emma stood in the transformed storage room, now bright with natural light from skylights installed during renovation. Student artwork covered the walls' depictions of courage, resilience, and hope. A holographic display showed real-time statistics from schools using the Parker Protocol. 15 interventions that day alone, each potentially preventing another storage room horror. The sun set through the skylights, casting rainbow patterns across the floor where predators had once cornered their prey. But this wasn't an end in it, was a continuation of the revolution Emma Parker had started with a hidden smartwatch and a refusal to be silenced. Somewhere, a teacher was downloading the Parker Protocol app. Somewhere, a student was finding courage to report abuse. Somewhere, a bully was learning that power had limits and justice had teeth. The storage room door stood open, as it always did, now a symbol that secrets couldn't survive in the light, that isolation enabled abuse, and that connection could conquer fear. Emma Parker had entered that room as a targeted teacher and emerged as a national hero. But more importantly, she'd transformed a space of intended violence into a beacon of hope. Her smartwatch displayed a simple notification: "Your courage saved my daughter's life today. Thank you." It was the 1,000th such message, and each one reminded Emma that sometimes the most powerful weapon against evil isn't strength or authority. It's the simple act of refusing to let darkness win, one emergency button at a time. If Emma's journey has inspired you or reminded you of your own battles against injustice, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Every experience shared helps build a community where victims know they're not alone and where courage truly becomes contagious. Please take a moment to like this video if it moved you, helps more people discover these important stories, and remember, your support through the thanks button below doesn't just help me continue bringing these stories to light. It sends a message that we value narratives of courage over silence, of standing up over backing down. Together, we're building a library of hope for anyone who's ever felt powerless against their bullies. Thank you for watching, for caring, and for being part of this movement toward a kinder, braver world. Justice, she learned, wasn't just about punishment. It was about transformation of systems, of communities, of hearts. And as the sun set over Lincoln High, painting the sky in shades of hope, Emma knew that every child who walked these halls would know they were protected, valued, and empowered to stand against anyone who tried to diminish their light. The smartwatch that had saved her life had done more than call for help. It had started a revolution, and revolutions, Emma had discovered, begin not with armies or governments, but with one person saying enough and meaning it.